not so very long ago, here on the ex-estuary, a most extraordinary boat was made.
You arrive by train and you look out of the window and you think, well, have I had one drink too many? Because there, moored by the harbour wall, is this gigantic creature. This was the private pleasure boat of Captain George Peacock. Captain George Peacock was born through what is known as the Victorian era at the start of the Industrial Revolution. Born in Exmouth, raised in Starcross and educated from a very early age in what one might call an engineering context.
Following Captain Peacock's career in the Royal Navy, he joined the Pacific Steam Navigation Company and he worked with them for about 6 years. During that time he was their superintendent and he oversaw the construction of 2 steamships, the Chile and the Peru, and he took both of those steamships from England to Brazil, then on through the Straits of Magellan and then up the length of Chile to the city of Valparaiso. When they arrived there, they were treated like royalty apparently because it was the longest steamship journey ever made.
What was the problem of sailing across an ocean? Drinking water. The ship was powered by a steam engine. And what happens to steam when it condenses? Even better, it turns back into water. He developed a machine which was able to capture the steam, condense it and provide the drinking water for the ships. He was a surveyor. He's a man who made maps and surveyed coasts, and that was purely because of the importance of having first-class maps in order to navigate if you're going to have a steamship company, if you're going to have ports, and then to have an import and export trade, knowing that your ships would be able to get there. Perhaps the most famous example of his surveying, 2 of the major canals in the world. One of these canals is the Panama Canal. Those plans of his were used by de Lesseps in order to recognise there is a reality here of able to put a canal in to link across the isthmus, for which in books on the creation of the canal has not been fully acknowledged, but is widely known to be so. The Corinth Canal, across the Corinth Peninsula or isthmus in Greece, is another tribute to him. He was the person who surveyed that and made it possible.
So if you entered the canal at Turf Lock, on your left-hand side you would see what was then the newly developed railway, and you'd be coming through the double locks, specially designed so that 2 ships could come through abreast. And as you got here into the river at Exeter, or into the canal basin that had been built in the 1830s, the whole area will be lined with industrial buildings. Warehouses relating to the canal directly, or heavy industry around the side. But the drift had already begun from that commercial port to something based on leisure. You could hire rowing boats here to have a little journey yourself up and down the river and the canal. At the lock gates there'd be a refreshment kiosk that you could go and buy a cup of tea. Or if you're a little bit more adventurous and you got down as far as double locks, or even the Turf Inn at the entrance to the canal, you could go and have something a little stronger to drink.
Once he retired to Starcross in Devon, Captain Peacock began work on his most audacious invention yet, a swan-shaped sailing boat with 3 cygnet tenders. The length of the Swan is 17 feet 6 inches. Its greatest breadth of beam is 7 foot 6 inches, and its height from the heel to the top of the back 7 foot 3 inches. Its neck and head, beautifully carved, rise gracefully 16 feet above the waterline. The wings of the bird are represented by the sails. The interior fittings somewhat resemble those of a first-class railway carriage. There are Venetian blinds at the sides with oval plate glass windows. In the centre is a large table, enough for 10 persons to dine comfortably at.
It wasn't just a Swan as such, it was intended as a gondola, as a pleasure boat in which he and his friends would have a wonderful time exploring the estuary and wider horizons around the coast. It had lots of lovely ideas. The tail fin would wag and it would push the boat along. It was basically unstable because the sails were not aerodynamically designed. For the last 30 years of his life, having had a career splattered with creative inventions, he returned and applied this talent to living in Starcross. And the greatest manifestation of that was the Swan, which was moored in Starcross harbour, finally coming to rest after perhaps 60 or 70 years of continuous use, ending up in Regent House Garden as a playhouse for children, until finally it disintegrated. But if you wish to see the Signet, it is alive and well, in perfect condition, in Topsham Museum.
I remember first seeing the Signet in Exeter's Maritime Museum sometime in the late 80s. But it wasn't until 2019 that we started to really investigate where this strange boat had come from and the whole story behind it. To honour the memory of this unique craft, Burn the Curtain, a local outdoor theatre company, in conjunction with Ride On Cycle Charity here on Exeter Quay, built 2 swan-shaped rickshaws to ferry passengers up and down beside the river that first inspired George Peacock. If you're lucky, maybe you can get a ride. You won't need an inflatable bathing costume though. We promise to keep your feet nice and dry.